Welcome to the Widowed Parent Podcast with your host, Jenny Lisk.
Hey everyone, it's Jenny Lisk, and this is episode 68 of the Widowed Parent Podcast. So I really and truly had just the loveliest discussion with Elke Thompson for this episode. And Elke is a widowed mom in Scotland. She's originally actually from Germany. And after her husband died, she couldn't find any books to answer the many, many questions that her then 3-year-old son had about his dad's death. So she decided to go ahead and write her own, but there were many twists and turns on the journey to getting that done. She's now published 2 books and is working on a 3rd. I have to say both books are beautifully illustrated, wonderfully written, and I really encourage you to check them out. I'll put the link in the show notes for sure. And most of all, I guess I'd say if you've ever wondered whether you should be honest with kids about difficult topics, you'll want to be sure and hear what Elke has to say. So some of the topics that we discuss include how she explained her husband's heart attack to her 3-year-old, going to the bookstore and looking for a book to explain death to her young son, and people saying that he was too young to understand, the types of questions that her son was asking, which led her to understand that he was not actually too young, and then deciding to write her own children's books about grief. She talked about falling in love again and navigating the new relationship with her kids. She also talked about being diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer herself a few years after her husband died. And she talked about the importance of being honest with kids about difficult topics, including her own illness. And she also talked about why she ends both of her books with the message that it's okay to be sad and it's okay to be happy too. I hope you enjoy my discussion with Elke Thompson. My guest today is Elke Thompson, who is a widowed parent and author of several children's books on grief and loss. Elke is joining us from her home near Edinburgh, Scotland. Elke, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me, Jenny.
Yeah, this is terrific. I've really been looking forward to talking to you. And I should say I actually heard from a listener in the UK who had heard your talk. I believe it was at a bereavement group, a keynote speech you made, and suggested that I absolutely had to get you on the show. And I'm so glad that he reached out to me because this is terrific. I've watched your TED Talk, which of course I'll share with listeners. I really think that that's worth spending a few minutes watching. And I'm looking forward to talking to you about your book. So again, thanks for being here.
Thanks. Hi.
Yeah. Okay. So I'd like to ask you to just start right out, if you would, please, by just reading a little bit from one of your books. It's called Is Daddy Coming Back in a Minute? And like I said, it's a children's book. You have these 2 books, and they're terrifically illustrated, and we'll talk more about them in a minute. But just to kind of set for listeners here, the story starts out with your husband and your then 3-year-old son. They've gone away on a boys' weekend. Then everything goes really wrong, and I'll ask you to tell us more about that in a minute. But at this point in the story where you're starting, you've just arrived at the vacation place to tell Alex that his dad has died. Would you mind reading us a little bit, starting there?
Not at all. Is Daddy coming back in a minute? I ask. Mummy kneels down and holds my ear to her chest. Can you hear that? She asks. I can hear a funny bump, bump, bump. That's a heart, says Mummy. Everybody's got one. When it stops beating, you can't breathe anymore. You can't run around or walk or talk or laugh or wear little boys on your head or tickle anybody. Daddy's heart has stopped beating and he's never coming back. Has he gone to work? I ask. Mummy starts to cry a little and says, No, Alex, he's not gone to work. His heart has stopped beating and he died. Daddy can't use his body anymore, and he's never coming back. But where is he? I ask. Well, says Mummy, some people like to think of dead people as up in the sky. They could be a cloud or a star. But I don't want Daddy to be a star. I cry. I want him to come back down. He would like to, Alex, says Mummy, but he can't. His body stopped working and he can never come back.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. I think, and the book obviously continues like that. It's really terrific. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but just first, would you mind backing up before everything changed, when life was still, quote unquote normal? Can you tell us
Sure.
what was life like? What was, tell us about your family and your life at that point?
Yeah, cool. So I'm originally from Germany, and I moved to the UK in 1995, where I met Martin, my future husband. So we've been together since we were 21, and we got married when I was pregnant, when I was 30. And life was really good. He was a police officer, we'd been living together. I was a self-employed graphic designer. Alex was a happy baby. I fell pregnant again. We had a little baby girl called Olivia. And yeah, life was really good. A happy little family of 4, just kind of perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So then tell us what happened. Tell us about how everything changed.
Yeah, so, because Martin was working shift, he didn't get to see too much of the kids, but at the same time, they were kind of used to him being not around all the time, in and out the door. So we decided that we were going to have some father-son bonding time and some mother-daughter bonding time, and it was going to be a thing. We're going to have sort of separate little trips just to pay particular attention to each child. So off they went, Martin and Alex. Alex was 3, Martin was 34. Went to Caravan Park, about 150 miles away.
I'm sorry, I have to ask, what's a caravan park? Because it's not a word.
Like a trailer park, like a.
Oh, okay. So kind of like a campground with trailers or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay. Sorry, it's a terminology I'm not familiar with.
No, do keep me right, please do. So yeah, so off they went on their little holiday on a Sunday, and Alex was so excited, and he kept saying, "It's just me and Daddy, no girls allowed, and it'll be amazing," and it was. They phoned me every day, and they went on a boat trip, and they had ice cream for breakfast and all these things that Mummy wouldn't allow, and they had a great time. And they were due to come back on Wednesday. Spoke to him in the morning about 9:30. Everything was fine, and Martin just kind of went, "Well, I'll see you later," but he never did. That was literally the last time I ever spoke to him, and it was the last thing I ever heard. The next thing I knew was I was having lunch with Olivia, who was 11 months. Her first birthday was on the Sunday coming, so I was just kind of pondering what to do for her birthday. And my phone rang, and I actually ignored it and listened to the message instead, because I couldn't be bothered. But so I wish I had answered it now. But anyway, so I listened to the message, and this voice goes, can you phone the holiday park immediately, because your husband's been taken seriously ill and he's been taken away by ambulance. Wow. And I'm thinking, that can't be right. Like, I've just spoken to him. They were just having bacon sandwiches and they were on their way back, surely. So I phoned them back, and I got the same spiel. They just said, "Look, your husband's been taken seriously ill and he's been taken away by ambulance." I'm still thinking, this can't be right. So I'm going, "Well, where's my son?" Because my son's 3. And they're like, "Oh, he's right here." And I'm going, "Well, put him on." Still expecting some other child to be on the other line.
You thought there was a mix-up, and it was somebody else's husband. Yeah. Okay.
Totally thought it was a mix-up. So they put on this child, and it was my little boy. And Alex was kind of excitedly telling me that they'd wanted to go swimming, but the pool was shut, and they might go back if there was time before coming home. And well, my world just stopped. Like, the room started spinning, and I saw black and white, and I realized it was actually happening to us. It wasn't a mix-up. So they put me back on to the owner of the holiday park, and they said they would look after him until we could get there. But at this point, I didn't have any more information. I just knew he'd been taken away by ambulance, and that was that. So I Googled and phoned lots of hospitals in the area, but nobody knew where it was. Nobody of that name had come in. So then I phoned his parents and we decided we'd drive down together. So we kind of met halfway, still reasonably local. And my phone rang again, and this voice says, where are you? Because we need to send a police officer to come and see you. And I'm going,
oh, no.
Nah. I'm going, no. I'm going, look, will you just tell me if my husband's dead? And she just kind of went, no, I really need to send an officer to come and see you. And I'm going, listen, I'm a police officer's wife. I know how this works. Will you just tell me if he's died? Because my 3-year-old son is a 4-hour drive away and I need to go and be with him. So she took a few deep breaths and said, yeah, that's what's happened. He had a heart attack and he died.
Wow.
That was how I found out, in the car park.
Yeah.
So we kind of, we decided we had to drive down together in one car. I didn't even think. And my mother-in-law went, well, you're going to have to drive his car back because he's dead. And I'm going, right, okay.
Wow.
So I just, threw some stuff in a suitcase and packed Alex's toy ambulance, and off we went. And so we sat in this car for 4 hours. Nobody said a word. I phoned the nursery to explain what had happened. But other than that, I just stared out of the window and I was trying to figure out what to say to my son, how I could explain to a 3-year-old that daddy had died. I'm really grateful I did have that time, in a way. For all it was horrible to not be able to be with him straight away, it was really good because by pure coincidence, I just read an article about childhood bereavement, and they said it's really important to be honest and use age-appropriate language because children think very, very literally.
Wait, you just happened to have read this article just before?
Just
wow.
a couple of weeks before. I know, it was just literally weird, right?
Yeah.
But so I spent all that time thinking about what I was going to say, and then when we arrived, I literally just opened the car door, just handed my daughter to whoever was standing next to me and walked up to him. And, that's where that conversation started that I just read out in the book. And the book's literally written in Alex's words. It's our story, and it's written from his perspective, and it's all the questions he asked in time. So I knelt down in front of him and, I said, can he hear that? Yeah, it's a funny bump, bump, bump. And I mean, children don't understand straight away, especially very, very young children. There's developmental stages they have to go through. And, child grief here, I don't know if you've heard that before, but it's often described as jumping in and out of puddles. So kids kind of grieve in little pockets. So, they can be inconsolable 1 minute and then they go, oh, let's go and play. So it was a bit like that. And because Alex didn't, you heard what I said, daddy's body stopped working, his heart stopped beating, and he died, and he can never come back. But for a 3-year-old who has no concept of forever, he doesn't understand eternity. Really young children still think that death is reversible. It's that magical thinking. He didn't really get it. So I was like, all right, I'll just go and get a book that explains death, right?
Yes.
So,
of course, that should be easy, right? That should be no problem.
Well, we're all going to die, right? So I walked into a bookshop and, looked in the, difficult subject section. We know where everybody talks about divorce and racism and going to the dentist and having an operation, and, but there was nothing about death. So I went and asked somebody, and he just kind of looked at me like I was crazy and went, a book about death for 3-year-olds? He's like, nah. I was like, okay. So, yeah, I couldn't really find one. In fact, I couldn't find anything at all. Somebody said there's a book called Badger's Parting Gift, which was all kind of nice, but, it was about a badger who got really old, and then, he knew he was going to die, but Martin wasn't old and he didn't know he was going to die. And most importantly, he wasn't a badger. So, a 3-year-old will never be able to identify with that. So I just decided I'll write my own, like you do when something isn't there that you need.
Absolutely. Yes, of course. That's well, and I want to hear all about that, but I want to ask first, one of the things I've heard you say, you had been told, I'm not sure, by various people, I guess, that your son at 3 was too young to understand. And then, but I think you were realizing that really wasn't the case. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, it was just, immediately obvious. I literally just initiated that first conversation because I had to explain why Daddy wasn't coming back. And after that, all I did was answer questions. So, my 3-year-old son, still age 3, started saying things like, what's going to happen to the house? Are we going to lose the house? How are we going to pay for it? Will you have to die, Mummy? And well, I say my favorite, it's the one that sort of, I don't know, it threw me. One night, he was still only 3. He said, how many more sleeps until Christmas? And I'm going, oh God, I don't know, 167? And he goes, now how many more sleeps until I have to die, Mummy? Oh. And I was like, boom. I was like, you're not too young to understand because you are asking all of these questions off your own back. This is nothing I have ever suggested. So, and then I figured, well, if you're not too young to understand, then all these other 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds aren't too young to understand. And, I realized to a 3-year-old, there really is no difference between asking, how does an aeroplane stay in the air? And, what happens to dead people? They just want to know because they don't understand. And I think, that's why I try and help people understand. If I say the word death to you or any other grown-up, any other adult, they know immediately what it means and they understand all the grief and the emotion and eternity and everything. They understand. But if you say death to a 3-year-old, to them it's just a word. Like they don't even know such a thing can happen. So, by him asking me all these questions, it was just so obvious that, I needed to find some words to explain in a way that he could make sense of it all. And that's kind of like what I've been trying ever since. My kids are like 11 and 14 now, so they do understand. But, like I said before, they grieve in little pockets here and there. And, we've had some sort of major episodes of sudden grief, including severe panic attack by Alex when he was about 9, I think, where he literally couldn't breathe. He literally couldn't breathe. And I thought he was going to pass out. So I think people kind of don't realize that, this is an ongoing thing. This doesn't go away. Kids, I think the perception is that kids will just forget if they're so young. And I think even my mum still thinks that, oh, Olivia won't remember. And it's like, no, she doesn't remember her daddy as such, but she knows her grief. She's still grieving for her dad. She's grieving for her lack of memories, and she's grieving for the relationship she never had with her daddy. So yeah, I think it's important to just speak to your kids and be honest and say, look, I'm really sorry this happened. It's a horrible thing that's happened, but I can't change it. And yeah, it's never going to be okay. It is never going to be okay. We're really, really happy now. I'm happily remarried. I have a really good relationship with my kids and my stepkids, and it's great. But we're always going to miss Martin. He's always going to be the missing piece in our family. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about where to go next because you said so many different things that I wanted to follow up on. Okay. I guess just most recently, one of the last things you said about your daughter being 11 months old, reminds me, I just interviewed a woman who's an adult now, and her mom died when she was 13 months old, so similar.
The jewelry box girl, right?
Yes. And we had such an interesting discussion, and it really has had, an impact for her, where exactly like you said, some people think, oh, when they're so young, maybe they won't remember, or maybe it won't be a big deal or whatever. And the idea that, no, you can't just assume that. That's definitely not something you can ignore, even when a child is very, very young. And actually, this is also reminding me, it's the episode that's going to be released tomorrow. So by the time people are hearing this, it will have already been released. My discussion with Lane Hendricks from Kate's Club because I've gotten a bunch of questions specifically from parents whose children were infants or very, very young when the other parent died, and kind of looking at that piece of it. So I'll put a link. By the time this airs, I'll be able to put a link to that one in here as well, because I think that people who do have young kids like yours would want to listen to that discussion too. Okay, so let's see here. I know that about 2 years after Martin died, you and your kids spread his ashes. Can you tell us about that? Because I think you said that at first you were kind of uneasy about it and not really sure how it would turn out. And can you tell us about that piece?
Yeah. Okay, cool. So there's a whole bigger story to this, because originally I thought, well, Martin was cremated, and I was like, oh my God, because over here you can keep your loved one's ashes for as long as you want. It's different in Germany, so I thought, I'll keep his ashes until the kids are much, much older and they fully understand, what we're doing. But then, life has a habit of keeping moving, and I fell in love again about 13 months after Martin died. And about another year after that, we decided to move in together and get a home together. So all of a sudden, to me, it didn't feel right to take the ashes with me as such, because it was going to be a new beginning. But I felt a little bit uneasy because the kids were still really little. I think my daughter was still 2, almost 3, and my son must have been 5 or 6. And I beat myself up for ages over what to do and how to do it right and how to do it properly, because obviously we'd never really spoken about what we wanted to happen after our death, because we were in our 30s, right? So,
yeah.
And then, I remember earlier, I need to backtrack a little. So earlier, probably a few months after Martin had died, Alex asked, what happened to Daddy's body? And I explained about the ashes. So he kind of went, have you got Daddy's ashes? And I was like, oh yeah, I do. And he goes, oh, can I see them? And I'm going, okay then.
Uh-huh,
So I was like, right, okay, so yeah, here's the box, off you go. And he goes, it's not very big, but it's very heavy. And I'm going, yeah. And he goes, can I look inside? And I'm going, not sure. Okay then. So we opened the box, and inside was a bag, and he goes, can we open the bag? And at this point, like, my room's spinning again, because I'd never really seen someone's ashes before either. I'd been to people's funerals, but they'd all been buried. So, but he looked at me with so much curiosity and anticipation that I realized, like, I'm the one having the problem here. And I thought, well, people spread their loved ones' ashes, so okay, let's open the bag. And I thought it'd be really, really like, ugh. Because you don't really want to see your dead husband's bones.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So we opened it, and Alex goes, oh, can I touch it? And I'm still like, But then I thought, well, why not? Because when you spread your ashes, you touch them. So we sat there and we sort of drew little hearts into the ashes, like you would with sand on the beach, and it was really, really nice. So, jump forward another year to when we decided to spread the ashes. So I got up one morning and I was like, oh my God, all of a sudden I know what to do. And so I told the kids, and Alex got really, really upset. And he was like, oh, I don't want to spread Daddy's ashes. And I'm going, it doesn't mean that we'll stop thinking about him. He'll always be part of our lives. But how would you like to keep a little bit of Daddy's ashes, you and Olivia? I bought a couple of little, them tiny little glass bottles with corks in them. And I was like, you could keep a little bit. It's a really special memory. And instantly he was like, yeah, I'd like that. I think that'd be really nice. So we sat and put a little bit of Martin's ashes into these glass bottles, and the kids, I mean, they still have them, but they don't just have them, they cherish them. They're in their room on the windowsill, they have conversations with them. And it's really nice. And then we planted a tree actually was more of a stick, which we dug up out the garden. It was like a ginkgo biloba tree, which I really, really liked, but it never did much. So Martin called it compost because that's where it was heading. But we planted it with the ashes and then spread the rest at a place that was really special to Martin and Alex. And, you know, the kids were involved in all of it. You know, they touched the ashes, they chucked it in the soil, they mixed it, they planted the tree, they watered the tree. And, you know, it was really, really special. And I decided, you know, on his birthday, we could go back to the place where we spread the ashes and have ice creams and read magazines. And we did the first year. There was still some of his ashes there, and the kids liked that. It was really, really nice. And we went back the next year, and they couldn't find any more of his ashes. And they were kind of like, well, what's the point in coming back here then? So we stopped. But, you know, when we moved house, the tree came with us. And I still talk to it sometimes. But yeah.
And so thank you for going through that with us. And I think then that this portion of your story became a second book as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. So the second book's called What Happened to Daddy's Body. And, you know, it explains just that, and explains about cremation and funerals. And it also kind of shares a story of, you know, how I fell in love again, how John came into our lives. And, you know, it says, look, John is not my daddy, but, you know, he's really funny and I like him a lot. And you know, my new life is okay. And yeah, that's really special too.
Yeah. Well, and actually, it struck me that both of your books end the exact same way. They both end with, Mommy always says it's okay to be sad, but it's okay to be happy too. And we are. Yeah. So can you tell us about that? Like, why did you choose to end both of the books this way?
Yeah, I think, I think it's important to understand that just because something really, really terrible has happened doesn't mean you're not allowed to feel happiness anymore. And I certainly know, you know, there's a lot of guilt involved, a lot of guilt for feeling happiness, even on my part, falling in love again, you know, feeling guilty for all that happiness. But I know for a fact, Alex really, really struggled with it. And I remember going up to speak to him, and I said, look, you know, John seems to think that, you know, you struggle having him in your life. And he goes, oh, no, totally fine. And I'm going, all right, okay. And I sat him down and I drew the outline of a heart onto a piece of paper. And I said, so he must have been about 9, I guess. And I gave him a box of crayons, and I was like, right, go and pick a crayon, any crayon, and colour in how much of your heart is sad that Daddy died. So he picked up a black one, no surprise, and coloured in just over half of it. And I'm going, that's a big space. And he goes, well, it's a big sad. And I'm going, yeah, it makes sense. So I was like, right, now write down all the names of all the people you love and who matter to you. So, you know, up comes the list, Daddy and Dad, because he calls John Dad, Daddy, Dad, Mum, you know, the dogs, my friends, my auntie, blah, 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 blah. And I'm going, okay, now pick a different colour for each of these people and give them all space in your heart. And he froze. And he went, but there isn't much space left. And I'm going, okay. And he goes, and I can't take any of the black away because it would be like, I'm not sad anymore that Daddy died. And he started crying, and he's like, and I don't want to lose any of my memories of Daddy. And I think he'd be angry if I was happy because he died. So I was like, okay, so what can we do? And he was just like, I don't know, Mummy, I don't know. So I took a pencil and I drew a bigger heart around the little heart. And all of a sudden we had enough space for everybody without taking any of the black away. And that, you know, that visual image really helped him to understand. And, you know, I always say, look, the hole in your heart doesn't get any smaller, but the trick is to make the world around it bigger. And, you know, to honor that sadness, you know, to say it's okay to have that sadness, and that sadness will always be there, but it's also okay to build happiness around it. You know, it really helped him, and it really helped me as well.
Wow. Okay. I'm just thinking, I can't wait for listeners to hear our discussion. This is this is terrific. Okay. Let's talk about the process of writing these books a little bit. Because as you said, you went to the bookstore and you said, "Where's the book for my 3-year-old?" And they laughed at you. And, or, they
Yeah.
said, go away, basically.
They're like,
And
"Ooh, it's that crazy woman."
yeah. So you said, all right, I'll write it. And then you, I think, assumed that the world would say, oh, yes, we need this book. Let me publish it for you.
Yeah, totally did.
Yeah.
I was so naive. I was like, oh my God, it's just going to be snapped up. And, there's such a big gap in the market. And, a publisher will just go, oh, yes, we've been waiting for this. Not quite. Every publisher I went to kind of went, oh, it's not a nice book, and it needs to be a bit more generic. And can we not give it a happy ending? And you're like, well, no, because he died. Like, you can't make this happy. Like, we are happy, but, this is never going to be okay.
It's real.
So, yeah, I know it is, right? And so in the end, I decided I'm going to self-publish. I'm being a graphic designer, I kind of knew all about layout and getting stuff print ready and things. So I looked for my own illustrator, privately commissioned my own illustrator. We started working together. I loved her work. That was really great.
Well, yeah, the illustrations are terrific. You really found a great person.
Yeah, she's amazing. And then right in the middle of it all, because I put some money aside to, to pay for the illustrator, pay for the print, pay for a website. And right in the middle of it, we just moved house. I found a lump in my left breast and got a breast cancer diagnosis. So that was unhelpful.
I would say so. And this was what, about 3-4 years after Martin died? Or when was this?
Yeah, just under 3 years after he died. So he died in 2009. He died in April 2009, and I got my cancer diagnosis in March 2012.
Okay. So let's talk about the cancer piece then a little bit. I mean, I'm guessing must have been quite scary. I mean, here your kids already lost their dad, and I think your son asked you a question too that was what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, scary or sad. Can you tell us about that? Inquisitive,
sure. I mean, at this point, John and I, we've got 7 kids between us, like none together, but we've got 7 between us. So I had to tell 7 children aged 3 to 15 that I had breast cancer and that I might die. And that was really, really difficult. And yeah, I was really, really scared. Being widowed is kind of one thing, but, I kind of, again, naively, I thought, in a way that would mean that I was safe, because surely my kids couldn't have such bad luck twice, right?
Yeah.
But then, being so closely confronted with the possibility of your own death was really, really scary. So yeah, I mean, I had biopsies done on a Friday, and I asked, is this breast cancer? And they said, it's on the list, but it's not top of the list. We don't know. And then on Saturday, I got a letter saying I'd had an abnormal smear that was precancerous cells and I needed surgery. And, I put 2 and 2 together, and I thought, well, that's me done. It's spread, because they obviously found it in 2 places pretty much at the same time. And for a week, I don't even want to say this out loud, but I'm going to. For a week, I thought, how can I take my children with me? If I'm going to die, I can't leave them. And luckily, I said it out loud. I said it to John, and he's like, if you're planning something stupid, I'm off, but I'm taking your kids, and then you can just get on with it. And that was enough to knock me back out and see some sense. But, I guess what I'm trying to say with all of it, everything I do, everything I say, what I'm trying to say is, just be honest, with yourself and with others, and be open. As Brené Brown says, there's power in vulnerability. Someone else on your podcast said this, the power of sharing your story. I really, really like that. And, things, I mean, I was lucky things were okay. I mean, it was hard. I had 4.5 months of chemotherapy. I was really, really ill on chemo. I had surgery and I had radiotherapy, and I'm still on hormone treatment. That's like 8 years on. But I'm okay. And again, I was honest with the kids. Alex asked, "Are you going to die?" And I said, "You know what? I might, but the doctors have told me that they think the treatment's going to work and that I'm going to be okay." And he went, "All right then." And I think because I'd always been honest with them before, I'd always been honest with all of them before, he believed me. And, that was that. And then I remember once I finished treatment, I was like, "Oh my God, finally some good news." And I was like, "Finished treatment, I'm okay." And the first question out of Alex's mouth was, "Can people get cancer twice?"
Oh no.
And I was like, "Do you know what? People can get cancer twice, but I also know a lot of people who've beaten it twice." And that's true as well, And again, that's the thing I go on about a lot is, be honest with your children, but give them the best version of the truth. And then, if the worst happens, at least you weren't dishonest. You haven't lost their trust. And trust is a really important thing to me. I think it's important to be able to trust them on.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, because it's so powerful to hear from you who's in this position, with your kids, with your husband, with your own health. It's something that I frequently hear from grief professionals as well. And it's important to hear it from them too. And hearing your story of it, I think, is really important and powerful. So thank you for talking through that with us.
You're welcome.
Let's talk some more about the books, because you mentioned that you had put aside some money for printing and artistry and so forth and so on, and then you got this cancer diagnosis. And so can you tell us then that money I think you needed then? How did you get the books out into the world?
Yeah, so the money I needed, because my now second husband, who was, just my boyfriend at the time, he ended up but he chose to quit his job after taking all of his holidays and unpaid leave. And I really was very, very poorly on chemo. Most days I couldn't even lift my head off the sofa. So he quit his job. So we had to use the money for day-to-day living. But I'm quite stubborn. So I was like, I'm still going to make this happen. So I decided to try crowdfunding, which was amazing. So it's basically, you make a little video and you publish it on a crowdfunding platform, which needs to be approved. And you say, this is how much money I'm trying to raise. This is how I'll use the money. If you pledge a certain amount, you get a reward. So if you pledge very little, you might just get a postcard. If you pledge a little bit more, you might get the book, and it's all kind of described and laid out. And I needed about £12,000, but I was too scared to ask for that much money, because if you don't reach your target after a certain number of days, after 30 or 60 days, you don't get anything. You don't get any of the money at all. Yeah. So I was like, right, okay, so £8,000, I can kind of find the rest, but I need £8,000 to pay the illustrator. And oh my God, the money just started pouring in. It was just incredible. Like people were, amazing. People just giving money, but they weren't just giving money. There was like kids sending me pictures that they had drawn, and it said, we really hope you get better again, and we're looking forward to reading the book a bit about the little boy whose daddy died, just like mine has. And people were sending me headscarves and earrings, and it was just incredible. And I think that human kindness just carried me and helped me through chemo so much. Did I mention I had a really miserable time on chemo? But I mean that, and that gave me purpose. I think it gave me purpose to get up and post things, and the sense of, I was just so grateful. And just blown away by human kindness. Absolutely incredible. I will never ever forget that. She says that now.
It almost makes you want to go back to the publisher and say, look, see, this is needed. People do want this, right?
I know. Yeah. I mean, it did find a publisher in the end. But yeah, it was a bit of a tricky one.
Yeah.
I guess they waited until it was all done and paid for, right?
It's proven to be successful. And what a great idea.
Exactly. Oh yeah, that sounds good, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think it's lovely how in the front of the book, each book as well, you have, I think some, a thank you to your crowdfunders and some comments and stuff. Some of the
I could not have done it without them.
Yeah, that's incredible. I'm so glad. I mean, that's just a wonderful outcome. I'm glad that they were able to support you in that way. Okay, let me see. What haven't we covered? Because we've covered so much. Let's see. Oh, do you have any more books that you're working on?
Funnily enough, I do. I've just, I'm a little bit in the same predicament, and that the publisher have kind of agreed to publish them, but they don't have the funds to pay for the illustrator. So I think I'm going to try and self-publish them again. But I've written 2 more children's books. This time they explain cancer or breast cancer and cancer treatment. That's the first book. And in the first book, it's about Mummy who gets breast cancer. It's kind of like our story. And in the first book, Mummy gets better. And the second book explains living with and dying from terminal cancer. And in the second book, Mummy dies. And I did a lot of research for it. I interviewed a lot of families, what that happened, because I wanted to get it right. And I worked closely with my oncologist and with people at Maggie Centre. It's like a cancer support centre. And with people working in pre-bereavement and childhood bereavement. And yeah, I'm trying to make them happen so that they're there, they're written. The first one's going to be called Is It Still Okay to Have Cuddles? And the second one is going to be called Is It Still Okay to Be Happy? So I found an illustrator. It's a different illustrator because Anna's concentrating on her own work. But yeah, and then COVID-19 happened, so we need to see what happens. I'm determined to make them happen. So check in on my website and see what happens with that.
Do you have any expectation at this point of when those books might be available, or is it too up in the air with all the pandemic?
Well, I had hoped to be available by the end of the year, but I suspect that might not happen. But hopefully it won't be too long. So fingers crossed.
Okay. All right. Well, terrific. Well, we'll be on the lookout for those for sure, and maybe loop back and talk with you again about those when those are ready.
Yeah, cool.
So let's see. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you think we should?
Well, I just think I thought of another little story that I wanted to share. Just when he said, children are too young to understand. This happened when Alex was about 7 or 8, and he was once again kind of revisiting what had happened and trying to make sense of it in a new sort of developmental stage. So I went up into his room and he sat there crying, and I was like, well, what's wrong? And he just kind of went, oh, Mum, I was just thinking, if only I'd been a little bit bigger, then I might have been able to run a little bit faster, and I might have been able to get help there sooner, and Daddy might still be alive today.
Oh boy.
I know. And, from the very start, I said, look, I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done anything differently. You're amazing. And I told him again, I was like, look, I couldn't have done anything different. I spoke to everybody involved in Daddy's care. I spoke to the paramedics. I spoke to the consultant. I spoke to the pathologist. And, they all agreed that, unfortunately, your daddy was just going to die that day. And I thought that would make him feel a little bit better. But, he just looked at me and he went, Mummy, if I'd known he was going to die anyway, I wouldn't have bothered running to get an ambulance. Like, I would have just sat with him and hugged him and told him I loved him.
Oh.
And, I think that wasn't prompted. That's just an 8-year-old boy speaking his mind. And I think people need to hear that and understand that. I think we need to give children so much more credit for what the potential they have for understanding, if only we are willing to explain it in a way that they can make sense of it.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah.
And I think also, I think the other thing people often ask, when did Olivia start asking questions about death? But she never really did. And for a long time, I wondered why. And then it occurred to me that she was always there when Alex had asked a question. So, she understood it all. So she asked a lot of questions about her daddy, but death to her is just a normal part of life. So much so, she's not frightened of people asking her questions, and, she's not frightened to speak about her daddy. And I remember after we moved house, a new friend came in. She must have been about 5. And I was just sorting out some of the books. And this little girl says, "What's your mum doing?" And Olivia, in one long sentence, looked over and went, "Oh, right. So when I was a baby, my daddy died and my mummy couldn't find any books that explained death. So she wrote one, and now we help other kids that, that happened to. And do you want to go on the trampoline?" And the girl went, "Oh, that's so cool. I wish my mum did that." And off they went on the trampoline and jumped, and that was it, And I think there's a lot to be said for normalizing the normal. And we're all going to have to die. Nobody wants to think about it. But I think when you're aware of it, when you are so acutely aware of your own death, like I was with my cancer diagnosis, I think it makes you live better.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing.
I'm just thinking of one of the things you said in your talk at TEDx Münster here, and I think maybe as we start to wrap up, it's an important theme. You said, "I've learned that it's neither my job nor within my ability to protect my children from everything, but it is my job to help them understand and to provide them with the emotional resilience they will need to deal with life's adversity."
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's every parent's instinct, or everybody's instinct, to protect your child. And, that of course you should protect your children and your child. But I just think we protect them by helping them understand, not by pretending that bad things don't happen. We need to prepare them for being responsible and caring adults. And hopefully I've done that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's a terrific place to wind up. So let me just ask you one kind of summary, maybe question here, or piece of advice. If you could say one thing to newly widowed parents, what would you say to them?
I think I would say, if your child is old enough to ask a question, they're old enough to hear an answer, and, protect them with the best version of the truth. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. I think that's a great place to end. So my guest today is Elke Thompson, who is a widowed parent and author of several children's books on grief and loss, including Is Daddy Coming Back in a Minute? So Elke, where can listeners find you and find your books if they'd like to learn more about your work? You can find me online. So I'm on elkethompson.com. That's ELKETHOMPSON.com. And there's links to my Twitter and my Facebook and LinkedIn. So my Twitter is at Elke Tweets. And you can find links on my website. And thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me today. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Elke Thompson as much as I did. You can find show notes and all the links at widowedparentpodcast.com. Look for episode 68. And do be sure to look for the links to her 2 books in the show notes. I think these books are terrific. If you have a young child in your life who's grieving, or if you know of a grief center that works with children that maybe collects lists of books, or a library at their center for the books, love to help get the word out about them. They're really just terrific. Like I said, beautifully illustrated and beautifully written, and I think you'll want to check those out for sure. And today, a big shout out to listeners in the UK and to listeners in Germany in honor of today's guest, who of course is currently in Scotland and has been living there for quite a while, and was originally from Germany. So I'm very glad to have all of you here, and please do let me know if there are any resources in your areas that I should know about and share with other listeners. So coming up on the show next week, I'm very excited to bring my discussion with Julie Lithcott-Hames. She's the author of How to Raise an Adult. Terrific TED Talk on the same topic. which is well worth watching. And the book, of course, I think is a must read. I love talking with Julie. She was so real, very much like Elke today, and I think have such important messages for those of us who are parents. So do look out for that next week. And also, if you haven't had a chance to catch some of the recent pandemic special episodes that I've put together, the most recent one was What You Can Do When You Can't Have a Funeral, with Buffy Peters from Hamilton's Academy of Grief and Loss in Iowa. You can find that one and the other pandemic special episodes at jennylisk.com/pandemic. So in other news here, continuing to attempt to work on editing my memoir on parenting through my husband's terminal illness. I have to say it's a little bit frustrating. I just feel like there's so many things on my plate with the weekly show, as well as the other pandemic episodes, as well as, just like shopping and keeping all of us sane and keeping all of us going. So slowly but surely, I guess I'm getting there. I will, after I get this episode posted, I'm going to carve out some time to sit down and work on that some more. So please be sure to help other widowed parents find this podcast. One of the best ways you can do that is by sharing it, and also by rating and reviewing in iTunes or on whatever your favorite podcast app is. It really helps people to find it, the more ratings and reviews that there are. So that's all for this week, and thank you very much for listening. And until next week, keep smiling.
Thank you for listening to the Widowed Parent Podcast with your host, Jenny Lisk. Connect with us on social media and at widowedparentpodcast.com.